Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. This is the third edition of Thursday Talks for 2021. And today's topic is digitally transform or perish, a topic that is getting more and more relevant as we look at the world today. We're moving to a new normal, and the new normal, as all of us know, is getting to be more and more digital. And with us today, we have an esteemed panel. We have Danish Jaffer from Automation Anywhere, Andre Bugra from IBM, and Satish Bala from Bala Corp. Satish, I think, is running a little late, but we're sure we will get him as we get started. So, without further ado, my name is Vijay Thomas. I'm the president of the Indo-Canada Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome all of you again. If this is one of your first Thursday talks, welcome. If it is, one of those ones that you've already attended, thank you very much for attending our previous events, and thank you for coming again. So, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is something that people have been talking about. This is something that people said, what is digital transformation? And some people have said it's like dog's breakfast. Now, what is dog's breakfast? Now, if you go to India, somebody will say dog's breakfast is roti. If you go to North America, it probably is kibble. If you go to South America, it is tortilla. So a dog's breakfast is anything. So basically, it's a term that's used quite loosely, but we'll try to learn from our experts today on what digital transformation essentially means. What is it that companies and this is companies of all sizes can learn from digital transformation, and how can they transform themselves? And we'll learn about that more so today. So we have, looking at how, so we've got some of that. We'll leave that to the panelists to discuss. Before we get there, we'll talk about the ICCC Small Business Assist Program. This is something that we started last year as COVID hit. Um, if you are a small business, if you're an individual, engaged in something that you do on your own, but you need some help around technology, around finance, around accounting, give us a call or send us an email to iccc@iccconline.org. Just say Small Business Assist Program in the subject line, and we'll have somebody on our side get connected to you, and we will help you. So 1 hour of free training, of free help, somebody on our side. We have a lot of experts within the organizations. Will connect you somebody. So moving on. So we have a little disclaimer here. This is to make sure that none of you can sue us at the end of this program or later on. All the advice or anything that we say now is only for general information purposes, does not constitute legal or professional advice. There's a bunch of different stuff in there. And then, the views expressed by speakers are their own personal opinion, does not necessarily reflect the views or of the ICCC or the position of the ICCC. So moving on. So our presentations will start with Danish Jaffer from Automation Anywhere. I got confirmation that we got Satish has joined us, and we've got Andre. So without further ado, Danish, I'd like you to give a little background about yourself, and the floor is all yours. Over to you, Danish.
Perfect. Thank you, Vijay. And it's a pleasure to be here today as part of the panel. So I do appreciate that. So a little introduction about myself. My name is Danish Schaffer. I work for Automation Anywhere, a robotic process automation leader. And I've been with the organization for a few years. I come from the technology space. In the last 15 years, I've been focused on both IT infrastructure in various software companies. I've been in the RPA space for now close to 2 years, and there's no other space I'd rather be. The impact that it's having on organizations is tremendous. So again, it's definitely a pleasure to be here speaking with you today. Next slide. Perfect. Oh, one slide before, please. Perfect. So think of this, since the year 2000, 52% of Fortune 500 companies are no longer around, and that's staggering. Many were replaced by companies that disrupted them with more innovative business models, right? And we'll talk a little bit about digital transformation in the next slide. But a lot of organizations have disappeared. In fact, what we've seen is the lifespan of companies have declined from an average of 61 years back in the 1950s to about 15 years today. The list grows even larger and larger when you bring into account economic factors and things like COVID, right, where we've seen the list grow and grow, where organizations have had to fold because of these factors. Next slide. So what's happened, right? Those organizations, and many of these will be familiar with you, these are all organizations that started with a core foundation of automation and digital transformation. That's what they were founded on. They're able to adapt very quickly to competitive changes, factors related to the economy. And these are ones that are really, really thriving in today's, the new world that we have today. So I guess really the question is really, when you're looking at organizations today, where do they want to be, right? And at the end of the day, they're realizing that digital transformation is not a nice to have, it's a must. In order to be competitive in today's world, in order to be more business resilient, automation is the now. Digital transformation is the now. Next slide. So I'll just kind of give you an introduction into what RPA is for those that are not aware of it. The first thing is that RPA doesn't replace any of your current applications or an organization's applications or replace any processes. It sits on top at the presentation layer, and it interacts with all of your applications. It doesn't matter what type of applications are similar to a human. A human will go into an application today or fulfill a promise. The only difference is that a bot does it instead. The second thing to really be aware about is it's technology agnostic, and this is very important. As I mentioned, it sits on top of your environment. So it can work with any of your applications, including applications that might be homegrown and homemade, and even applications that are only accessible through Citrix. So again, it's technology agnostic. The third piece is, and it's actually grown since this, but RPA came from the idea that whatever is very repetitive, mundane, you're doing the same logic over and over, those are ones that you should automate, right? That frees up a lot of time and effort. However, with intelligent automation, with AI and machine learning that's now come around, you can now even increase the scope of what you can automate, right, with cognitive capabilities. And finally, the last one is similar to all of us. When we're fulfilling business processes today, we have to toggle between 4, 5, 6 apps, take data from PDFs, etc. A bot interacts in the same way. It can toggle between applications. Next slide. So what does this all mean, right? What's really the impact of automation on your organization? Well, business resiliency at the end of the day. And that's key. And what we've noticed in the COVID world was those organizations that were already on the path to digital transformation and had RPA, they were very easily able to kind of move their environment to a COVID world, right? A transition into a more work from home, and how do we really manage the scaling up and the down of the business that was what the business was going through COVID. The second one is labor optimization. Bots work 24/7, 365 days a year, right? They don't sleep. So it enhances that labor and what you can do within your organization. The next one is very important. And when I see employees, when they have bots that are working in their environment, the cycle times of bot are incredible. So if it takes a person today 45 minutes to fulfill a process, with RPA and automation, that can be done in a matter of minutes by a bot, and all on the back end. Everyone here, if you have a business and you work for an organization, your customers are everything. Your net promoter score is everything. And so customer experience is at the forefront. And what RPA does is, because it can speed up processes, Things are done a lot faster, a lot more efficiently. It just enhances that customer experience. Employee productivity is incredible, right? What I've seen with automation is, and when people see it for the first time in their day-to-day work, it's incredible on how much time it saves them in a lot of that mundane and repetitive tasks, and their productivity skyrockets. And finally, with digital transformation, we all live in a world where security is top of mind and compliance is everything. And RPA, because it pushes a digital transformation, is the foundation of it. It really helps to ensure that everything is secure, and you're always compliant. Next slide. So this is a perfect example. Now, this happened in a COVID world, right? It's a major airline that, because of COVID-19, the existing staff wasn't able to handle the peak demand on cancellation and refunds process. I mean, everybody's probably heard, obviously the ongoing impact that it's had on the airline industry, but especially when COVID hit and when travel went down, it was a big endeavor for folks to actually do this manually. And really, through our solution, RPA was able to help these folks that were doing the returns, and they were able to perform 10 validations to confirm changes, and were able to issue refunds in lightning speed time. Most airlines were able to process 4,000 requests daily without instead of 500s, without adding additional headcount. So it's not just about having to increase headcount in order to manage growth or manage demand. Bots do a great job at giving you that scale up and scale down. Next slide. And finally, I find that in my 2 years in the RPA space, it definitely does depend on the type of organization you are, your size, and what you do. But in average, this is what you're looking at through digital transformation and automation, right? The big one is cost savings. With bots now taking over processes and taking the manual work out of it, you do save a lot of time and find a lot more efficiency. So costs do go down. Your customer experience goes up significantly, right? I talked about this in the beginning. More than 50% plus in organizations see a customer experience or a better net promoter score. The last thing I'd like to show is the ROI. As I mentioned in my intro, I've been in the industry for a long time in the technology space. And RPA is one of the few things in automation that, within the first 12 months, you'll see a return on investment. I've seen most organizations see it in the first 6 months. So very, very impactful, to say the least. So the reality is, it's not a matter of should I jump into automation or digital transformation. The reality is you have to be there in order to survive in today's world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danish. Before we get to Satish, I'd like to just add a few points to what Danish says, because the company that I also run, we're also in a similar space, and we've seen a lot of the similar kind of aspects of what Danish talked about, and specifically where Danish said, like the airline industry, when COVID hit, when it started off, people tried to do refunds. There was a big backlog, right? There was a big backlog, and it took some time. And after which the backlog, went away. But the backlog did not go away because they put more people in the back. They put more bots. They put robotic process automation bots in the back. Very similar, in the banks, right? In the banks, when they said they will give the loan waiver, the CBS and all these different loans waivers that happened in the US and in Canada as well. The banks initially were very backed up until they found bots to start doing a lot of this thing in the back end as well. So so bots are prevalent, and this is not a future thing. This is not something that happens in sci-fi movies. This is really happening today, and these are companies that you know of, and they're already using it. So with that behind us, and we'll get into more detail in the question and answer session. So get your questions ready. I see some questions coming in as well. We'll move to Satish Bala. Satish is a serial entrepreneur, and specifically today is working on homeschooling and AI in the homeschooling space. So Satish is going to take us through something that he's doing right now, which I think is very relevant, how AI can help in schooling as well. So over to you, Satish, if you want to tell us a brief about yourself and then get to the slides, please. Welcome again.
Amazing. Thanks, VJ. Thanks, everybody. It's nice to come back. It's been a while since I've had a chance to share some thoughts with the amazing community that you guys have built. And so thank you for the opportunity. 30-second intro. Like VJ said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship was a way to sort of figure out what I want to do in life coming out of computer science at Ryerson. Didn't know what kind of job I wanted to go into, but my natural sort of tendencies to look at what's the problems in the world and how can I fix it. And so that led to a journey of 25 years of building and exiting 3 different tech startups. And the last one I exited was in 2017. And I spent the next 2 years working exclusively with startup founders on helping their businesses get to market with Ryerson and my own private investment that I was doing. But COVID kind of changed everything. And as I said a minute ago, I like solving problems. The biggest problem I was having when COVID hit was I got 2 kids at home with no access to education, and parents turning into teachers was becoming such a stressful home experience. And so I do what I do best, which is try to find a solution. And if that turns into a company, awesome. And that launched Schoolio, that we soft launched in April and then went to market August 1st. We can get to those slides. So, I wanted to chat a little bit about AI. And, there was a time where AI was very technical, very code heavy. It was imagination. A lot of people just on an everyday level just never understood what is AI. And the simplest way for me to explain it is think of it as a second brain, or in some cases maybe a third brain if technology is in between. But ultimately what AI has been able to do is demonstrate that things that we do every single day that we process from a human filter can also be processed through a digital filter. And almost everything you do today has a level of AI that's developed behind the scene to empower you and help you. So something as simple as logging onto Netflix tonight, there's an AI behind the scene that's learning what you like to watch, how long you watch it, what's your favorite types of movies at 12 and 1 a.m. when you're just surfing versus 6 p.m. when you're trying to watch a valuable movie. The audio you consume, the content you consume, every little thing that you touch, when you sort of pay attention to it, there's another brain that's processing that information for you. And I believe, AI is an incredible strategic thinking in every business. Doesn't matter what business you're in. There's something you can do to take the stress of the customers thinking about your business by automating something. And when I got excited about Schoolio, the obvious problem we wanted to solve is access to home education. Parents that are either homeschooling or looking for support for after school just didn't have a way to easily access it. And when schools were open, we didn't really care as parents. We dropped the kids off in school, picked them up at 3:30. And unless the teacher told you the kid is not doing well, we didn't care about tutoring and additional support. It just kind of happened. But when schools shut down, there was no access to curriculum. We wanted to solve that problem by opening up the doors to the school system, exposing the Canadian curriculum for parents, and rewriting it in such a way that parents at home can feel comfortable about teaching math and science and language and social studies in the comfort of their own living room. It also allowed us to create an equality because so much of tutoring and after school support is pretty expensive. And a lot of us don't have the extra cash flow to be able to afford $200-300 a week. So becoming transparent in the school system, creating an affordable way for people to get support with education was really important. But the third thing that really sort of excited us is in school, the only sort of measurement of a child is a report card we get. And it usually focuses very much on the kid's academic performance in school, but it doesn't take into account the personality of the child, the learning needs of the child. And rightfully so, a teacher with 20 or 30 kids in a class can't really, with her or his brain, look at all of the different things that are happening in school. So we wanted to sort of take three things and see where we can apply some new innovation and new AI tools to it. Next slide, please. So at its core, we have learning tools we have tutoring, and we have the full curriculum. But when we looked at learning assessments and we looked at virtual tutoring, we said, okay, we can do the basic, connect a teacher and a kid. They have a Zoom call, they have an hour, and then the experience is over. Or what more can we learn from the same instance? So we started looking at how can we use AI to understand the content. So imagine I am now coaching you or teaching you, but the whole video could be now plugged into a transcriber, which then starts to look at all the keywords in our conversation that continues to repeat itself. And we can take that data and plug it into a model that allows us to look for learning inefficiencies, areas where the child is really excited about a topic, and we can start to understand what's their language and comprehension around education. And those are things that a tutor cannot do in a one-on-one session. You just do not have the brain skills and the attention to be able to look and see things that you can't visually see. So that's one way that we are bringing AI into our tutoring and education program. The other thing we're doing is taking the same video lesson and now putting it through a video face tracking technology, and now we can start to map facial emotions and lack of or a display of emotion. And those are, again, things that the human eye is going to miss or can't see a pattern or understand over time what those things mean. But now, simply taking that single 1 hour tutoring session, we're able to convert that experience into 3 or 4 different types of data set, which gives us a very unique and holistic vision of what that child is in terms of learning, their interests, their ability to retain information. And now, if we can arm the parents with that data and also arm the schools with that data, how much more effective can we help that child progress through education? And I've always firmly believed the point of school and the point of higher education is to build the confidence in the kids that they can learn anything. And so if we can teach them a different formula, will the next generation embrace education from a different perspective because they're confident that they can learn anything in the world. And AI allows us to now do that very simply within the same context of tutoring and education and lesson as a new layer of brain. So next slide, please. So I know there's some questions coming up, and we'll totally answer it. But I wanted to just sort of give you guys some framework around what is AI, and then how is it actually usable in a real business that we're building. And if you can take a step back and imagine whatever startup you want to start or business you're in, you can start to think about what are the things my customers are thinking about that I can now create a brain to service them a little bit faster and a little bit better. And all the different data points that we as humans will miss can be picked up by the smarter technology to add value to your business. So I hope that helps.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Satish. And I think Satish has shown us how AI and digital transformation of just homeschooling. If homeschooling can get digital, which is something that we probably, not homeschooling, but let's say schooling can get digital, anything can, right? So I think that's the premise that we want to say, that any business can become a digital business. Any people can transform. And if you don't transform and your competitors transform, then you are left in the lurch. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail. We've got some questions coming in. That gives us to our next presenter, Andre Burga from IBM. I think it's Bugra. I think we spelled that wrong. My apologies, Andre. He's from IBM, and IBM has been a pioneer. I think all of us know of IBM Watson, and Andre, what we're is going to take us through how IBM sees artificial intelligence, sees digital transformation from their lens, and how it is getting ubiquitous. Anybody and everybody can use Watson. And I think I'm interested in listening to what you have to say. So over to you, Andre. You can give us a little brief about yourself, and then you can take us through your slides.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to the other panelists and the ICC members. So quick 30-second about myself. So I've been in the technology world for roughly about 15 plus years now, mainly in the business development, account management, and sales. I joined IBM in 2016. It was really a point for me, which was certainly a life-changing opportunity to join IBM and to be part of this massive technology transformation movement, what we call as AI. It's also my personal passion to get myself more educated on AI. Learn about AI and some of the data initiatives which are going around the world. So yeah, happy to talk through, and I will be kind of focusing on some of the more use cases and I would say where what we are seeing from our lens, the real implementation of AI. As Vijay initially mentioned, what are some of the industries, what are some of the processes which are benefiting with the adoption of AI. So I just want to take a step back, all the way to 1990s, where we saw a lot of companies working on a lot of great products, right? So we see that that phase, that era of new product launches, and then 2000 we saw a lot of products and services that the company started to offer in the market. And very quickly, in about a decade, there was a lot of focus, a lot of attention on companies trying to be more customer centric, right? So customer service, customer delight became a huge focus for a lot of companies, and that's where really when we saw some digitalization kicking in some of those processes. Fast forward 2020. It's and it's all about data, right? So I think everything that we do at IBM, everything a lot of big companies do at this point is all about the power of data. So we are seeing a massive upswing in how the companies are going to consume data, how the companies are going to use data and grow and expand. Next slide, please. So here's a bit of a stats from some of the top industry analysts who look at this space very, very deeply. Gartner is kind of predicting that the data, the number of companies starting off with their new AI projects it's almost 3x, 4x in the last few years, and this is still a 2019 data point. So this is pre-COVID, right? And I'm really looking forward to see what they come up with in their 2021 prediction for the adoption of AI. Similarly, Forrester, that's another analyst, talking also, 57% have built AI skill teams for greater than 50. So I think that's where some of the industries have pivoted very early in their AI journey, right? Some of the financial services companies, retail companies have built those skills internally, and have been able to augment that on top of their existing processes. So that's where the trend looks like. And obviously, as I said before, with the advent of COVID, that might just accelerate by a 10x going forward. So that will be interesting to see. Next slide, please. So coming back to the topic of data, I think that's where the fundamental lies. Data is what fuels digital transformation, and you can experience it in your personal lives. You can, very simple examples are Netflix, Amazon. We have that recommendation engine sitting in there and recommending some new movies to us or shows to us. It's all based on what we have seen before on the platform. It's all data at the end of the day, and yet only 15% of the companies out there actually extract the real value from that data. And the reason probably being is that the 80% of the data is either locked in silos, it's not business ready, it's not curated appropriately for consumption. Talking about data, when we move on, when we take the next step, really, the next step really is AI. AI has certainly emerged as a big strategic business opportunity. Again, Gartner predicting 3.9 trillion in business value over the next year or so. And again, I won't be surprised to see this is doubling or tripling in their next prediction report. Now, when we talk about AI, some of my co-panelists talked about the how some of the entrepreneurs have been able to leverage the power of data, creating new business models. And that's where we are going ahead with the AI. It's all about creating newer business models. Some of the more deeper dive on that would be, how do we predict and shape future outcomes, right? Can we do some predictive forecasting in finance? That's one of the capability that IBM has, is to help some of the financial executives out there to predict and do some financial forecasting. Empowering people for higher value work. So, how we could help, how the companies out there, how you could actually have your employees work on the work that really values, right? And kind of let AI take over some of the more repetitive tasks and time-consuming tasks. Humanized customer experiences. That's another big area of where AI has been super impactful in a very, very positive way. You would be interested, you should be interested in AI if you care about customer experience, if you care about, about the NPS, if you care about expanding and recurring business from your customers, and giving that your customers that experience of working with your company. And intelligently automating workflows. So basically, just again, AI-driven, augmenting some of the workflows. Next slide, please. Yeah, some more quotes from some of the big analysts and some magazines. Gartner, a critical component of continuous customer experiences includes evaluating where AI resources can extend or support your customer-facing associates, like chatbots, like conversational assistants. So that's a big focus of AI as of now, and that's been the area of focus of AI, where we have seen a significant early adopters and companies who are now scaling further from that position of being an early adoption. Next slide, please. I just want to quickly, talk about a quick kind of an instance about IBM's offering in the customer experience space, in the AI space, that is Watson Assistant. When we all got stuck by COVID with the pandemic, companies were scrambling, how to not just to maintain their existing business, but how to expand, how to make sure that they still continue to deliver the customer value. And many industries, as I mentioned before, pivoted very quickly. Some of the industries or some of the client segments that we see in the market that actually pivoted very early, and probably you'll be surprised to know that the government sector did actually pivoted very, very quickly. We saw some of the municipalities adopting chatbots, working with IBM and IBM's chatbots to deliver information to their citizens on COVID-19, on COVID testing. IBM came up with a COVID-19 chatbot just for answering some of those curious and anxious questions from the citizens out there, and that was a very rapid transformation from some of the sectors. So basically, Watson has been impacting some of the 3 or 4 use cases that we see out there: better customer experience, that sort of transition into increased productivity and reduce operational costs. So that's where the focus really is from our perspective. Next slide, please. Just to end my slide with just say that data is a new business model, right? And knowledge, and this is all about knowledge economy. So knowledge is a new business capital, and it's never too late to embrace AI. Thank you.
So thank you, Andre, and that brings us to the end of our initial round where we've listened to all our panelists, and thank you very much. I think that was insightful. Each of you brought a different perspective. I think we're open for now questions. I think we've got a few questions coming in already. The first question is a question. I think I'll give this to Danish. Danish, the question is, what size of companies can consider RPA, robotic process automation? And basically the question means, do you need to be a certain size, and can smaller companies also consider RPA? Danish?
It's a great question that we do get all the time, and the answer is that it's not based on the size of the organization. I always tell customers that it depends on how manual your processes really are, right? At the end of the day, RPA is about saving time. It creates efficiencies, no errors. It gives you bigger bandwidth, and it does things faster. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter about what size you are, the revenue that your company brings in, how manual are your processes. And we have organizations, that are very small that see the value of RPA all the way down up to enterprise. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Danish. And I'll give us an example because, as I said, we operate in the same space, and we also operate in India. Okay, so you got small companies in North America, and you have small companies in India, which is a whole different ball game. So so we had to come up with an offering in India. I don't know how many of you are have been in Mumbai. In Mumbai, you have a cup of chai, and you also get cutting chai. Now, cutting chai is 1/2 chai. You divide a cup of chai into two. Okay, so you get a 1/2 chai. So my company, we decided if you can have a 1/2 chai, why can't you have a 1/2 RPA bot? Okay, so we actually have a 1/2 RPA, 1/4 RPA bot. So you don't have a full bot. You only use it for, if it's 24 hours in a day for a full bot. We have 4 companies that share the bot during the day. And the bot works, let's say, 8 hours for somebody, or 6 hours for somebody, 6 hours for somebody else, 6 hours for the other people. So that comes up, so you divide the day, so you almost time share the bot. So that's something we did. So something that I think is going to become prevalent in other parts of the world as well. So smaller companies, you don't have to buy the whole bot, but you can probably hire a bot for purposes, and there are people who are going to do that as well. So good. I think that was a good question. We have some more questions. I'll probably give this question, Satish, if you want to take this question. This question is more about young kids in university schools wanting to get a career in digital transformation, AI. What is your suggestion? What should they be studying? Right? Somebody a long time said, go get plastics. Plastics is the future. I think it was Nobel said, do anything plastics, and he made a lot of money. So what should people do? Young kids that, we're saying digital transformation is the future. What should they be studying if they want to be in this business? Satish?
That's a really good question. So whatever you study today, the how to do something won't be relevant by the time you start to actually do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I tell anybody that's thinking about digital transformation, AI, or any of these new innovation, start to really understand what problems are being solved. And when you start to understand what problems are being solved and how technology can create a solution, you start to understand how to look at the world from the customer perspective. I'm a computer science graduate, and when I graduated, I was like, yeah, I got all the coding skills in my hand. They've taught me all the languages, but nobody taught me how to look for a problem. Nobody taught me how to understand how to connect the dots. So technology by nature has to change and evolve and do something every single time. But the lessons you can learn on how to identify the problem, paying attention to customer pain point, seeing what can you innovate with all the tools is really the thing that I encourage everybody to focus. And in there's some basic stuff, I think learning how to code should be part of everybody's education. Even if you don't want to be a programmer, the discipline of learning how to architect code is important. And I think as of 2019, coding is now included in the curriculum, which is amazing, which was never there before. Financial literacy, even though you're going to eventually create something, understanding economics around cost and revenue is really important, so you can understand how to solve a problem. So I think don't focus too much on like the skill sets you need today, knowing it's going to change. Really focus on what are the things that interest me. What areas of the world do I care about? Am I into finance, healthcare, education? What is it? And then start to think about what can I build as a basic foundation that I could use in any of the arenas I want to play in.
Thank you, Satish. We'll take a question for you, Andre. Andre, this question is more around IBM Watson. So is IBM Watson only targeted at large enterprises, or can small enterprises, because IBM as a company, I know where the question is coming from, is IBM is usually the domain of big companies, right? So has IBM broken that barrier? Can small companies even consider IBM solutions? What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question and a very relevant too. Yeah, and I agree with that. And the answer is, oh, absolutely. We work with all kinds of clients, right? In every industry, we are agnostic. And especially with the Watson chatbots, we have actually worked with some of the florists, right? Companies who are running their own independent businesses, right? For example, maybe a instructor at a university, right? I mean, they're requesting that, hey, how we could use chatbot to kind of help my clients, as a very small consulting company, just to have those initial questions addressed on the website, right? So yeah, I mean, Watson AI is basically for every size of the company, every business. If you have and if you care about your customers, if your end customers, you want to scale, that's technology that one should be looking for.
Yeah, and just on the aspect of AI, it is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. I'll give you an example. My company, we've worked with India's largest biscuit manufacturer. So the biscuit manufacturing on the assembly line, the biscuits come so fast that they cannot do human QA, right? They have to pull out a bunch of biscuits, and they have to do manual sample-based, QA. So you bring out a sample. Now we put in very high-speed cameras. As the biscuit comes through the line, there's a high-speed camera that takes pictures. The AI looks at it and says, this is light brown, so this needs to be baked a little more. It slows down the conveyor. It says, okay, this is dark brown. Now we got to speed up the conveyor. It looks for the surface. And if it's a cookie with actually nuts in it, it makes sure that the nuts are actually spread out, and if they're not all bunched together. So AI has taken over a bunch of things, even in production. So absolutely, Andre, and it's something that we see all the time. So we have another question coming in on Facebook. Question, I think this, I'll let Danish take this. It's, how do you calculate the ROI of RPA deployment? And I know the person who answered the question has invested some money in RPA. So, as part of our policy, we don't really, give the people's names, but, they've invested a bunch of money. They're looking at how do we calculate ROI.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's really the most important thing when customers are starting their digital transformation automation journey. So I would say that, when you look at ROI, you really have to see, there's a few factors, right? It's monetary, like how much time am I saving from having bots do something compared to my current human workers doing it, right? And that's a big piece. Another piece that sometimes people forget is there's a cost of having errors, right? We're all human. I make tons of mistakes. The more I work, the more mistakes I make, right? It's just normal. How much time and how much dollars are saved because that invoice was correct from the start and not the end? But what I'll say is this, right? We tell customers all the time, start now and start fast, right? So you'll start seeing benefits, in the first 2 to 3 months, depending on what type of deployment you're doing. The key really is how you scale. The faster you can scale your RPA and your automation, the faster and the bigger return on investment you're going to have. That's the reality. So that's why it's really important, we say, to look at a solution that will help you scale. It's not just about the now, right? It's about in the next year or 2 years, how fast will I be able to create bots? But more importantly, making sure you're working with, a good implementation partner that can help make sure that you scale at the right pace.
Thank you, Danish. I think that answers the question. Andre, we have a question for you. It says, it's for all. It says, how do you suggest companies address the various legal compliance requirements of both local and international business transactions? And how does digital transformation help to accelerate or address this? So legal compliance requirements, and how does digital transformation help to accelerate or address this?
Sure. Yeah, I can kind of try to address that question from an IBM perspective. So, from an AI digital transformation perspective, our solutions have those models which kind of address that compliance related issues, right? So we have a solution itself which is built around helping clients to be more compliant with their local compliance or their business compliance issues. And much of that is actually powered by machine learning, right? And the AI which sits in there and makes shows that you are compliant. So most of our IBM portfolio of solutions do have that element of machine learning and AI, which could be an industry accelerator for some of the industries, or it would be customized to address some specific business problems in that industry.
Thanks, Andre. And just on that line, I'd like to add a few, 2 cents onto that as well. I mean, people have said initially there was a big hue and cry about, can we let bots into our secure environment, right? What if the bots went rogue? And my answer to that is, there is a fraction, a very, very infinitesimally small fraction of a chance that the bots will go rogue and than a human going rogue. A human can go rogue much more easily and then a bot. So if you're looking at security and if you're letting a bot do a task, the bot is definitely the chances of the bot doing something wrong or doing something for personal benefit is much lower. So the in that sense, getting technology to do things is definitely a better thing, and I think this is something that people have beginning to realize as well. So if you got compliance, you got SOX compliance, you got any of those other ones that you require to run your business, the big thing that people ask is, has a human looked at the data, right? If a bot's seen the data, you're kind of in most cases better off. So I think that's the overlying principle there. Any of you want to add? Satish, Danish, anything to add to this?
Well, I would just add that, and I tell this to customers all the time, that bots are dumb, right? They're only going to do what you've programmed it to do, very simple, right? And anything a bot does or touches in your environment, it's fully encrypted. So from a security standpoint, you're not going to get better security than that, right? So definitely.
Okay. Thanks, Danish. We have a question for you, Satish. You probably have, there's going to be people going in and registering for your school year product, because it says, Satish, great job with the AI-based school product. How does your product adapt to students with special needs? Secondly, the access available to the product 24/7. So you got 2 questions.
Special needs and 24/7. Fantastic questions. So let me answer the easy one for now. The access to 24/7. So we decided not to have a digital platform. We wanted to get the tactile transfer of education. So even in school, kids sit in front of a teacher, they take out a piece of paper and pen and they write. And I don't believe digital is the natural way for kids to consume educational content and retain it because we've trained them that digital is fun. It's the after school games, it's the PlayStation, it's the Netflix. So I don't believe in our research and the way we approach it that the primary transfer of knowledge is through digital. So all of our content is old school workbooks. You buy the curriculum, you print it, you set it at the table, and you go. There's a ton of additional reinforcements that we do through digital tests, assessments, quizzes, tutoring, but the core transfer happens between the parent and the child, or the tutor and the child. And so it's not a 24/7, it's whenever the need is. And also, one of the best things I've learned going down this path of homeschooling is, even though we believe the kid is in school for 6 to 8 hours, the actual learning is 10% of that, 20% of that. Once you bake in the recess and the lunch times and the other 18 kids the teacher has to take care of, the actual transfer of knowledge is about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. And so parents have a lot of flexibility to really understand what's the best way to teach our kids, which we've never asked before. We've always just kind of said the school will teach our kid, or if there's a problem, I'll augment it with some tutoring. But when we start to say, hey, what is the best way to teach our child? It opens up to a new framework, which takes us to the second conversation of special needs. And unfortunately, because the school system hasn't really handled it, a lot of the homeschooling parents start down that path because they need to give their kids a little bit more support. And, there's extremes in both spectrum. I've got minor ADHD, my daughter does, and then there's folks on the autism side that are extreme and not. And so, I think from a special needs perspective, what we are able to now do is to say, hey, once you have the secret sauce, the actual curriculum, you know what it's going to be for 36 weeks, you know the content, you know how the teachers are going to be teaching it, and you can understand what scientific notion is for a grade 2, you now as a parent can create the best way to deliver that. For some folks, it's through art. For some folks, when the summer was out, they take their kids to the park, and as they're playing, they're taking breaks to learn math and language and science. And so I think what we're excited about is to bring this new additional pillar for education that is really open for the parents, and all the supporting things we're building continues to give them visibility into what is my child's style of learning. And if we can connect the two, then special needs no longer becomes a point of concern. It's a way to empower them. And that's the narrative we want to change.
Thank you, Satish. And we've got around maybe like 8 minutes left. What I want to do is we were hoping to get Minister Sarkaria, who is the minister in the Ontario government. That's also responsible for the, there is a whole digital business program that the government is actually providing money and grants to small businesses in Ontario to make themselves digital. And I'll give you an example for that. If you are a restaurant, and you need something to get yourself online and be able to sell stuff online, right? There is a grant available. So, the ICCC, if you need more information, just send us a note. We will send you the details, or go to the Ontario website. We were hoping to have him. He couldn't make it today, but I strongly recommend everybody. It is a grant. It's, I think, $20,000 that's available for the taking. So come up with something that you think can make you digital, and there is money to be had as well. Quickly, I just want to run through. We've got people here, entrepreneurs that are in different businesses. How do you turn yourself digital? The people have said, what is the biggest driver for digital transformation? Was it the CEO? Was it the CIO? Was it the customer? And then one of those tick marks was COVID-19. And believe it or not, COVID-19 was the biggest driver for digital transformation. Today, it has democratized a lot of industries, right? If you want to be in the restaurant business, you don't need to have a restaurant. You don't need to have a front restaurant. You can have a cloud kitchen. You can cook your food. You can have your restaurant, say, food from Punjab, and say greatest restaurant, greatest Punjabi food. It doesn't have to have a front end. People go to Uber Eats. People go to any of the other apps. They find your restaurant. They come in. They get the food from your restaurant. They give you a 5-star rating. And guess what? You're top of the charts. You don't have a front. You don't have a restaurant. You don't have fixed costs. You don't have any of that. So that is truly digital transformation, where you can take on. In the old days, they said, if you're IBM, you're a big company. IBM, if you go to 3600 Steels, still a very big office. Up came a small startup, www.ibm.com. Small startup came in www.smallstartup.com. From the website, you never knew how big or small the startup was, right? Now, this is the second wave of change. Forget the website, that's already done. Now, you can take on a big company, a big restaurant without having anything. Now, that's truly digital transformation. If you're an insurance agent, you don't need to have the flashy office. You embrace digital. You can reach as many people as the big insurance company. You can put in a chat bot that will chat with your customers 24/7. The old companies had their call centers, but their call centers go home at whatever 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. Your chatbot's working 24/7. So you can beat the big guys at their own game. So I think this is the true democratization of business. If you use the right technology, you can and you should. So on those lines, I want to have a few words from all of you. How can people democratize business? What should they do? I mean, 1 minute to each of you. What should our audience, the ICCC members that run small to medium-sized businesses, what should they consider? So I'll start with you, Andre. You went last. You go first here. Over to you, Andre.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first and foremost thing that you got to do is to evaluate your business mission, right? I mean, where do you want to see yourself in few couple of years, right? What's your real business value of adoption of these technologies? Are you in the business of delivering value? So you got to create your own mission statement. You got to create your business objective. Always remember, AI is an enabler to achieve your business objective. It's not the other way. So anything that you do with AI or digital transformation, always have a scope document, always have a mission statement, which will help you get there quickly with more efficiency.
Thank you, Andre. Danish, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I suggest, and it kind of brings us back to what I was saying before. Start now, start fast, because you got to get on that bandwagon, right? What's the worst thing that can happen, right? I think you'll find that once you see the bots in action and automation in your environment, you'll see all the great value that it can bring. So again, start now, start fast.
Thank you, Danish. Satish?
Yeah, I echo the panelists and their sentiment too. And the only thing I want to add, I've been fortunate enough to be in the ecosystem of startups for over 25 years, and digital transformation is something that is really hot right now. But I also want to remind everybody that at the end of the day, whatever bot or AI or website you create, if the quality and the service to the customer's problem is not there, it doesn't matter. And so understand that digital transformation and everything we talked about is just another tool to be able to drive your business, but you still have to really understand what business you're in and why the customers are coming to you. And so don't lose sight of digital transformation being the magic pill. It is the thing that's going to force some change, but a good cookie to dip in a cup of coffee is still a good cookie. Doesn't matter where you get it. So
fantastic. I think that's a great way to end our panel discussion. Thank you very much, all our panelists. I'd like to also recognize the presence of our director for ITC, Bhavik Parekh. Bhavik, are you there? I think I saw Bhavik there.
Yes.
Hey, hi, Bhavik.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah. So Bhavik's, leading the charge with information technology at the Indo-Canada Chamber of Commerce. And Bhavik, we will be having many more of these sessions. I'm sure, we'll have all of you panelists back again. So on that note, we will get to the end of it. I think we've got a bunch of slides. So thanks, sponsors. So our technology partner, Tangentia, they've been a sponsor for us from last year to this year. So we also have our sector sponsor, SBI Canada, ICICI Bank, Raymond James, Seneca, GT20, TELUS Business, a gold sponsor, Turkish Airlines, and media partners, Weekly Voice and PTC Punjabi. And again, big thank you to everybody that attended today's session. Again, if you want to become a member, Bhavik is also our director for membership. We have a promotion on now, 20% off. Please, go to our website, ICCC.online.org. And if you have any questions, write to us at ICCC@ICCConline.org. So thank you very much for joining in, and see you all again next Thursday, same time, 4:30 p.m. Thank you very much. Have a nice one, everybody. Thank you.